They thought I was just a quiet, isolated old man, tucked away behind a thicket of overgrown foliage and a dilapidated chain-link fence. They thought I was an easy target, the low-hanging fruit for their immaculate suburban tyranny. They thought they could simply extort a patch in my yard, simply because my 100-year-old oak tree dared to obstruct the pristine view of their perfectly manicured golf course. They sent letters, then fines, and finally, a brazen notice of foreclosure on my property. But there was one fundamental fact the Willow Creek Homeowners Association never bothered to uncover. When I said I was a landowner, I didn't mean one lot. I meant all the land they were standing on, including the freshly renovated HOA Clubhouse they were so proud of. They were trying to take the private property of a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I was about to give them a legal lesson in eminent domain and real estate ownership they would never, ever forget. The threshold of war. Willow Creek was a fabricated American dream, where craftsman-style homes were painted in approved pastel hues, and gleaming SUVs glided over immaculate, swept roads. Amidst this mandated perfection stood a jarringly defiant property, Lot 32B, belonging to Elias Thorne. Elias, 60 years old, possessed the sharp, cold blue eyes of a career Marine. His home was an ancient oak-frame farmhouse, encircled by a heavy, rusting chain-link fence, a relic from the days when the entire subdivision was just farmland. The worst aesthetic offense in the HOA's eyes was a colossal red oak in his yard, a centennial monolith so large it cast a perpetual shadow over 4 neighboring houses and blocked the afternoon sun from their expensive patio furniture. Tuesday morning, the mail arrived. Not a friendly letter, but a thick, red stamped docket labeled final notice of ongoing violation from the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, HOA. Elias sat on his porch, sipping his coffee, tearing the heavy envelope with callous fingers. The fines were stacked high. 1. Non-compliant fence. Aesthetic disharmony with community standards, $500 per day. 2. The great oak, exceeding height limits and unacceptable visual obstruction, $1,000 per month. 3. The yard. Failure to maintain uniform green vegetative carpet standards. Elias's land was kept as natural wilderness, $750 per instance. The accumulated penalty had already soared past $15,000. Elias gave a short, humorless laugh. He had ignored the previous 3 warnings. He knew the HOA was trying to push him out, or at least break his spirit and force him into compliance. He stayed on this land for a promise he had made, and for the simple, quiet defiance of that magnificent oak tree. Carla, the uncrowned queen. The architect of this campaign was Carla Vance, the self-appointed HOA president. Carla was a woman in her late 40s, with impeccably blown-out blonde hair, designer athleisure wear, and a permanently clutched Starbucks cup. She saw herself as the soul, the operator, and the unofficial legislator of Willow Creek. Behind her back, she was universally dubbed Karen, the archetype of petty control and suburban hypocrisy. That afternoon, Carla pulled her white SUV to a screeching halt just outside Elias's gate. She didn't bother getting out, only rolling down the tinted driver's window. Mr. Thorne. Carla's voice was high and grating, laced with barely concealed superiority. I trust you received the latest notice. We simply cannot tolerate this blight any longer. The board has voted. If you do not address the fence and remove that tree within 48 hours, we will exercise the HOA's right of landscape modification, and you will be billed for all costs. Elias slowly set his coffee cup down. He approached the window with deliberate, unhurried steps. Ms. Vance. His voice was deep and resonant, devoid of aggression, yet possessing a commanding presence that made Carla instinctively grip the steering wheel tighter. This specific parcel of land is not subject to the HOA's governance. I've told you that repeatedly. Carla let out a theatrical, dismissive laugh, a brittle sound of ridicule. Don't try that tired game with me, Mr. Thorne. Every home within the Willow Creek master plan is subject to governance, including your dilapidated structure. The original sales contract stipulated it. Unless you intend to live completely off the grid, not using our common roads or our shared drainage system. I'll manage those details, Elias said, his eyes narrowing slightly. But I have to ask you this. Are you absolutely certain you read every single page of the original establishment documents? Specifically, the preliminary plat map from 1985? Carla offered a dismissive shrug. I've read enough to know you're in violation, and I don't have time for your archaic cadastral riddles. Prepare for our contractors. They will arrive Friday morning. Any interference will result in us filing a claim with the courts to foreclose on a portion of your property to recoup our costs. Have a delightful day." She sped away, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the echo of her victorious laughter. The letter from counsel. Carla's arrogance was the final catalyst. Elias walked back into his house, heading straight for his document room. It wasn't a typical home office. It was his personal archive, a library dedicated to law and cartography. He pulled out an old steel lockbox filled with yellow deeds, hand-drawn maps, and signed agreements. Among them was a newer document, a letter from a reputable downtown law firm, dated 3 years prior. The letter confirmed the acquisition of a defunct holding company known as Willow Creek Development Group, the original builders of the Willow Creek subdivision. Elias remembered his final conversation with his corporate attorney. "Lawyer Vio, it's done, Mr. Thorne. You own the parent company. That means you now hold all residual rights and obligations of the original developer, including ownership of common areas never officially transferred to the HOA, and crucially, the unilateral right to amend the original HOA covenants, CC and RS." Elias set the letter down, glancing out the window where Carla had just passed. He reached for another, thicker file titled Original Subdivision Map and Ancient Conservation Easement, 1985. He had tried to live in peace, allowing the HOA to operate because it hadn't encroached on his quiet existence. But now, the HOA, under Carla's arrogant leadership, had crossed a profound line. They weren't just threatening fines. They were threatening to seize the property of a combat veteran who understood the value of private ownership far better than they did. Elias picked up his phone and dialed an unlisted number. "Hello, Hank," Elias said, his voice now firm and businesslike. "The old man needs you. The neighborhood HOA is trying to foreclose on my property. I need you to review all the WCDG land titles I bought 3 years ago. Focus on the language regarding the road and common area ownership. And I want you to prepare a preliminary restraining order immediately. We're going to teach them the difference between a homeowner and a landowner." Elias's gaze was sharp, decisive. The game was on. Carla Vance had just opened a legal Pandora's box, thinking she was dealing with a harmless old eccentric. She had no idea she had challenged the rightful legal owner of nearly everything she was attempting to control. Fade to black. The legal war room. The air in Elias's study was thick with the scent of old paper and dust. Across a massive mahogany desk, 2 men were hunched over maps that looked more like ancient scrolls and modern property deeds. Elias Thorne, the veteran, and Hank Davies, the lawyer, a former Marine JAG officer who still kept his hair regulation short and his focus laser sharp. "She's aggressive, Hank," Elias said, tracing a finger along the boundary line of Lot 32B on a map marked Preliminary Plat, 1985. "Carla Vance and her little HOA Gestapo are moving fast. They've scheduled the contractors for Friday to cut my fence and trim my oak." Hank didn't look up. He was scanning the densely worded covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, a document Elias had acquired 3 years prior when he secretly purchased the defunct Willow Creek Development Group, WCDG. "Let them," Hank finally murmured, his lips barely moving. "That's the beauty of it, Elias. We want them to overstep. We need them to commit an act of clear, quantifiable trespass and damage on your land. My land being the lot I live on, or the other land?" Elias asked, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. Hank finally looked up, his eyes gleaming with professional malice. "The other land, the common areas, the roads, the drainage easements, the little park near the clubhouse, the entire infrastructure that HOA is taxing people for and maintaining with ridiculous finesse." He pointed to a clause in the original CC and RS. The text was archaic, full of conditional language intended to protect the original developer, WD, now Elias, until the final phase of the subdivision was completed and officially signed over to the HOA. Hank reading aloud. Section 4, subsection C, paragraph 12. Transfer of control and common area ownership shall occur upon the successful completion and dedication of Phase 6 of the Willow Creek development. Until such time, ownership and legal maintenance authority for all common areas shall remain with the developer, and all HOA assessments related to capital improvements of said areas shall be held in escrow by the developer's designated agent. Phase 6 was never finished, Elias stated simply. Exactly. It was abandoned when WCDG went bankrupt in '98, Hank confirmed. Circling the paragraph, the HOA was established in Phase 3, but they never completed the final transfer. They just assumed ownership of everything. And when you bought WCG, you bought the deed to all the land they thought they owned. The quiet title and the HOA's financial shenanigans. The legal strategy was clear. A quiet title action, a lawsuit to establish Elias's rightful ownership of the common areas, followed by a massive civil suit for illegal use and trespassing. "We need to drop the bomb now," Elias insisted. "They're going to be here Friday." "No," Hank countered, shaking his head. "We play the long game. We have to make the residents turn on their queen bee first." Carla Vance, "Let's look at the financial reports they sent you with the violation notices." Section 3. HOA Dues Utilization. They quickly cross-referenced the HOA's public financial statements with Elias's insider knowledge as a technical developer. The discrepancies were glaring. Large, round figures allocated to beautification and clubhouse upgrades seemed to align suspiciously with the dates Carla Vance's own property underwent extensive landscaping and a new pool installation. "Look at this." Elias pointed to an invoice for $15,000 for executive board member retreat and strategy session. "A trip to Pebble Beach in February," Hank noted drily. "That's not an escrow account withdrawal. That's theft, or at least a gross misuse of fiduciary duty. We file a request for an immediate independent third-party audit based on these discrepancies, citing the original CC and RS. That ties up their funds and distracts their lawyer." Carla's public ridicule. Meanwhile, Carla was holding a neighborhood emergency meeting at the very clubhouse. She was slowly bleeding dry. The mood was self-righteous and agitated. "That old hermit, Thorne, thinks he's above the law," Carla announced dramatically to the assembled 30 or so homeowners. Her voice was amplified by a cheap microphone, echoing in the too large room. "He's threatening us with some archaic legal jargon about property lines from 40 years ago. He thinks he owns our streets. Can you believe the audacity?" A few residents tittered nervously. Most were intimidated by Carla and simply nodded along. He sent a lawyer's letter, a cease and desist, claiming we are trespassing on his property by maintaining the median strip. Carla slammed the letter down on the podium. "I say we send him a clear message. We proceed with the cleanup on Friday. We show him that the will of the community is stronger than the delusion of one disgruntled old man." The crowd cheered weakly. Carla thrived on the public performance, mistaking fear and apathy for genuine support. She failed to notice the one quiet resident in the back corner taking detailed notes on a small pad, a newly elected and intimidated HOA treasurer whom Elias had discreetly contacted the week before. "He's nothing but a grumpy veteran who can't handle modern society," Carla sneered, lowering her voice conspiratorially, but keeping the microphone on. "He needs to be taught a lesson in civility and property value. Let's make him an example. Let's take his property." The unread clause. Back in Elias's study, the plan was finalized. "We let the trespass happen on Friday," Hank summarized. "Immediately after, we filed a motion for the quiet title on the common areas, making you the undisputed owner of the roads, the sidewalks, and the clubhouse land. At the same time, we hit them with the audit request and a temporary restraining order on their operating accounts." Elias stood up, stretching his back. "And what about my little fence? And my tree? We file a separate, simple civil suit for property damage and emotional distress regarding the tree," Hank said, packing his briefcase. "But the real power move, Elias, is buried in the transfer conditions." Hank pulled out a single sheet of paper, a ridership agreement to the original WCDG sales contract. Hank, pointing, "This is a nuclear option, Elias, because Phase 6 was never completed, and because you now own the developer's rights. You still possess the ability to unilaterally impose a special assessment on the HOA for unforeseen maintenance and legal costs incurred by the developer during the transition period." Elias leaned over the paper, his eyes gleaming. "A special assessment? You mean a giant bill?" "A giant bill," Hank confirmed, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "They are trying to seize your property for $15,000 in false fines. We are going to seize their entire operating capacity by billing them for the legal cost of having to fight them over property they don't even own. $500,000. Payable in 30 days. That's the power of fantasy. Elias. They tried to be the judge and the jury, but they didn't know who signs the checks around here." Elias looked at the document, a wave of profound satisfaction washing over him. Carla Vance's self-congratulatory laughter from the clubhouse meeting felt distant now, already fading into the sound of a looming financial and legal catastrophe entirely of her own making. The stage was set for a public humiliation. Fade out. The discovery of the obsolete deed. The following day, Elias and Hank drove to a faded, nondescript office building in an industrial park 10 miles outside Willow Creek. Their destination was the office of Old Man Tiberius, a nearly retired land surveyor whose firm, decades ago, had done the initial platting for the entire Willow Creek subdivision. Tiberius, a man in his late 70s with glasses perched low on his nose and hands stained permanently with ink, grumbled as he pulled dusty boxes from a high shelf. He was skeptical but curious. Willow Creek Development Group, Tiberius mumbled, wiping sweat from his brow. Lord, that was back in '85. Bunch of crooks. They went belly up before they finished Phase 6. The original survey maps are a nightmare of conditional easements and incomplete transfers. Elias placed the relevant documents on Tiberius's large drafting table. The HOA's recent violation notice, Elias's deed to Lot 32B, and most importantly, the complex legal papers confirming his acquisition of the defunct WCG Holding Company. The HOA is claiming control over my fence and my lot. Elias explained calmly. They claim they're enforcing the CC and RS for the whole subdivision. Tiberius adjusted his glasses and studied Elias's WCG acquisition documents. His eyes widened slightly. Wait a minute. You bought the developer? The entire corporate shell? Every last piece of paper? Hank confirmed. We're trying to determine the exact legal status of the common areas, specifically the roads and the clubhouse lot. The HOA has been using them for 30 years, but we suspect the formal deed transfer was never executed. Tiberius pulled out a massive brittle linen map. It was the original master plat. He flattened it carefully, revealing the intricate layout of the neighborhood. The lots owned by the individual homeowners were colored pink. The common areas, the roads, the drainage pond, the large patch of land housing the HOA Clubhouse, and the main entrance median were colored a faded green. Here's the rub, Tiberius whispered, pointing a shaky finger at a tiny, almost illegible handwritten note near the legend. Common areas green, to be conveyed HOA upon certification of Phase 6 completion and approval of county drainage easements. And Phase 6 was never completed, Hank noted, the realization dawning on him. Never even started, Tiberius confirmed. The developer's bank pulled the plug. This note means illegal ownership of all that green land, including the streets and the clubhouse lot. Never left the developer's hands. They just kept collecting the HOA dues for maintenance, illegally, because no one ever checked the original deeds. The scope of the landowner's power. Elias traced his finger over the green area. He wasn't just the owner of his one eccentric lot. He was a legal owner of every non-private street, every sidewalk, every landscaped island, and the very ground beneath the HOA's headquarters. Tiberius then dropped the final bombshell, looking directly at Elias. And one more thing, Mr. Thorne. See this small, thin line running right down the middle of your property, Lot 32B? This line was a contingency. It designated a small, half-acre strip along your fence line as a temporary construction easement for Phase 6. When WCG went under, that easement reverted back to the developer. It's part of the green area now. The HOA is trying to seize an area that is technically part of the common area that you now own. The irony was stunning. Carla Vance was trying to foreclose on Elias's property using their supposed right to govern the common areas. But the common areas themselves belonged to him. Elias leaned back, a profound, controlled smile spreading across his face. This was not just justice. This was absolute, irrefutable legal dominance. Elias, so, when Carla Vance at her board meet in their clubhouse to discuss foreclosing on my land, they are doing so in a building sitting illegally on land that I own. And the fine they issued me for the fence is related to an easement strip that is legally part of my corporate holdings. Hank, smiling broadly, a predatory look in his eye. Precisely. The HOA is trespassing on your property, Elias. Not the other way around. We don't just stop their action. We demand back rent, retroactive payment for all improvements they've made to your land, and damages. Preparing the legal blitzkrieg. The realization fueled their strategy. They weren't going to file a simple civil defense. They were going to file a legal blitzkrieg that would paralyze the HOA instantly. Hank spent the rest of the day drafting 3 critical documents. Motion for declaratory judgment, quiet title action, to formally confirm Elias's corporate ownership of the Willow Creek Common Areas, citing the non-completion of Phase 6 and Tiberius's original master plat as irrefutable evidence. Ex parte temporary restraining order, TARO, to prevent the HOA, its agents, or contractors from setting foot on Lot 32B or any common area for any maintenance or construction, like cutting Elias's tree, until the title was quieted. Notice of breach of fiduciary duty and demand for audit. Leveraging the financial discrepancies they found earlier, Hank filed this with the State Attorney General's office, effectively launching an immediate investigation into Carla Vance's use of HOA funds. The TRO hits them first thing Friday morning. Before the contractors show up, Hank explained to Elias that evening, "They'll try to call the police to stop you. You show them the TRO, which is a court order. That's where the power fantasy comes in. You're not fighting the law. You are the law." Elias looked at the stack of documents, the culmination of a decade of strategic, silent investment. He hadn't bought the defunct development company for this reason, but for the historical value of the land. The HOA's petty tyranny had turned his defensive investment into an offensive weapon. Carla Vance was about to discover that challenging a quiet, meticulous veteran, one who did his homework and secretly held the deeds to their entire kingdom, was the biggest mistake of her self-important life. The early Friday morning showdown. Friday arrived clear and crisp, the perfect morning for a suburban confrontation. At 7:30 a.m., just as the sun began to warm the asphalt of Willow Creek's main drive, a flatbed truck carrying a heavy-duty stump grinder and a team of uniformed contractors pulled up to Elias Thorne's property. They were accompanied by a shiny black SUV carrying Carla Vance, HOA President, and 2 other nervous-looking HOA board members, Betty and Doug. Carla stepped out, radiating confidence and a sense of absolute authority. She was dressed in crisp white linen, ready to supervise what she saw as the community's victory over the neighborhood pariah. "All right, gentlemen," Carla announced to contractors, gesturing imperiously towards Elias's towering oak. "Take down that chain link fence first. The boundary is clearly marked on our survey. Then move on to the oak. We want it trimmed back to the curb line. The community deserves the view they paid for." As the lead contractor approached the gate with bolt cutters, the main gate to Lot 32B slowly creaked open. Elias stood there, not in a confrontational stance, but simply watching, holding a manila envelope. "You're trespassing, Ms. Vance," Elias stated, his voice calm, cutting to the morning quiet. Carla smirked, pulling out her own stack of papers. The HOA's foreclosure notice. "Oh, I think not, Mr. Thorne. We are exercising our community right to modify property in violation of CC and RS. You missed the deadline. We own this hour." Just as she finished the sentence, a sleek, black sedan, driven by Hank Davies, Elias's lawyer, pulled up sharply, effectively blocking the contractor's truck. Hank stepped out quickly, his military precision still evident in his movements, and walked directly toward Carla, holding up a certified document. "Carla Vance, Betty Harmon, Douglas Klein," Hank barked, addressing the HOA board. "You are hereby served with an ex parte temporary restraining order issued by the county court. Effective immediately, you and all agents of the Willow Creek HOA are prohibited from performing any maintenance, construction, or alteration on Lot 32B, the access roads, the median islands, or the clubhouse property, pending a hearing on the title of the common areas." Arrogance meets the seal of the court. Carla took the document, her face instantly contorting into a mask of furious indignation. She scanned the first paragraph, her eyes lingering on the bold heading, "Order of the court." Then she laughed. It wasn't the brittle fake laugh of contempt from Part 1, but genuine, dismissive roar of incredulity. "Are you serious? An injunction? Over a dead old tree and a rusty fence?" Carla scoffed, turning to the contractors. "Look at this, gentlemen. He's trying to intimidate us with paper. This is a stunt, Mr. Davies. You know this is unenforceable on community land." Hank remained impassive. "The order explicitly restrains you from acting on Lot 32B and the common areas, Ms. Vance. The accompanying document is a motion for declaratory judgment, quiet title, establishing that your HOA does not, in fact, possess the legal deed to the common areas. My client, through the Willow Creek Development Group, does." Carla rolled her eyes dramatically. That old corporate shell? You're joking. That's been defunct for decades. We've been maintaining those roads, paying insurance, and paying for the clubhouse for 30 years. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Counselor, your client may have bought a stack of worthless papers, but we have the history. She crumpled the TRO slightly and tossed it back towards Hank. Missing. It fluttered to the pristine sidewalk. You tell your client this, Carla spat, her volume rising. We will ignore this ridiculous piece of trash. We will simply proceed with the necessary cleanup. We are the board. We decide what is legal here. And if you attempt to physically obstruct us, we will call the sheriff's department to report harassment and trespassing. The fatal error. Carla gave contractors a sharp nod. Proceed. Cut the fence. I will personally deal with the fallout. The lead contractor, now visibly uncomfortable due to the presence of a lawyer and a court order, hesitated. Ma'am, with all due respect, if this is a court order, it's a bluff. Carla snapped. Don't be weak. Do your job. Under immense pressure from the HOA president, the contractor reluctantly raised the bolt cutters. Elias stepped back slowly, nodding once to Hank. Don't say I didn't warn you, Hank muttered under his breath, stepping back to retrieve a second document from his briefcase. Crunch. The contractor cut the old chain-link fence, the metal links snapping loudly. A clear act of trespass and property damage. Carla beamed victorious. There! She exclaimed, throwing her hands up in the air. That is how we deal with noncompliance in Willow Creek. Now the tree. Get the grinder ready. As the crew started moving the heavy equipment onto the freshly severed strip of land, Hank quickly called a non-emergency sheriff's line on his phone, detailing the deliberate violation of a freshly issued court order. He then walked to the exact spot where the fence had been cut, pulled out a stack of 8x10 laminated photos, and started taking pictures of the damage, the contractors, and most importantly, Carla Vance standing right next to the scene, directing the action. Carla, intoxicated by her perceived power, was already making another call. Hello, Brenda? Yes. Tell the Willow Creek Chronicle I have an exclusive story about how we are fighting neighborhood tyranny. Send a photographer immediately. Carla Vance had committed the perfect, fatal error. She knowingly and publicly violated a court order while trespassing on property she didn't own, believing her HOA title made her untouchable. She had walked right into Elias's trap. The quiet title action was now an open-end shut case of clear contempt and trespass, and the evidence was already captured on Hank's camera. The arrival of the authority. The sound of a police siren, distinct from a usual suburban background noise, sliced through the air. Carla Vance, standing triumphantly next to the freshly cut fence, turned with self-satisfied smile. She fully expected the officer to cite Elias for harassment and trespassing against the HOA's contractors. The sheriff department patrol car, driven by Deputy Miller, pulled up to the scene. Miller was a young officer, but observant. He saw the commotion. An expensive-looking woman yelling, a quiet old man, a well-dressed lawyer, and a contractor crew looking increasingly uneasy. Carla rushed towards the deputy, speaking quickly and dramatically before Miller could even get a word out. Deputy, thank heavens. We called you. This man, Elias Thorne, and his aggressive lawyer are harassing our licensed contractors. They are interfering with the legal, court-mandated maintenance of our community. They serve us some worthless paper and are trying to stop the HOA from doing our job. Miller calmly held up a hand to stop her torrent of words. He looked at Hank, who stepped forward with professional composure, holding his ID and the file court order. Deputy, my name is Hank Davies, counsel for Mr. Thorne. I called your non-emergency line. We are here documenting the violation of a court-issued temporary restraining order, TRO, Hank said, handing Miller a copy of the order, stamped and signed by Judge Thompson. The HOA president, Ms. Vance, deliberately instructed her contractors to cut my client's fence after being personally served with this order. Deputy Miller's demeanor changed instantly. A TRO is a serious matter. He began reading the document carefully. As he read the detailed legal language, his eyes went wide. He paused, looking from the document to Carla, then to the severed fence. The HOA's jurisdiction breakdown. Miller then turned to Elias. Mr. Thorne, this order, it's highly detailed. It not only protects your Lot 32B, but it also mentions the common areas of the Willow Creek subdivision. Specifically, It prohibits the HOA from performing any work or modification on the roads, the median, and the clubhouse property. Carla interjected, her voice shrill with indignation. That is ludicrous. They are lying. That land belongs to the community. We are the community. He has no jurisdiction over our common areas. Hank stepped in, a slight, victorious smile on his lips. Respectfully, Deputy, Ms. Vance is incorrect. The accompanying motion for declaratory judgment seeks to quiet title, based on the fact that the legal transfer of those common areas from the original developer, a corporation my client now owns, was never legally executed. Pending that judgment, the court is issuing this TRO to maintain the status quo. Ms. Vance, by directing these contractors, has committed a clear act of contempt of court and criminal trespass. Deputy Miller, now fully realizing the complexity and seriousness of the situation, pulled out his radio and called his commanding officer to report the situation and verify the TRO's authenticity. A few moments later, the confirmation came back. The TRO is valid. Judge Thompson signed it yesterday. Miller looked at Carla, his expression stern. Ms. Vance, the court order is valid. You and your contractors are hereby ordered to immediately cease and desist all operations on Lot 32B and the surrounding property. Continuing work would be a direct violation of judicial order and grounds for immediate arrest. Carla's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and a sudden, sharp fear. You can't do this. I am the president. I am protecting property values. He is the menace. Call the judge. I know the judge. Ma'am, Miller replied firmly, your authority as HOA president ends where the court order begins. I have to enforce this order. Your contractors must leave the property immediately. The judge and the sheriff, the contractor crew, relieved, quickly packed up their equipment and retreated. The humiliation for Carla, standing in her spotless white linen outfit next to her shiny SUV, was total. The neighbors who had gathered to watch the execution of Elias's tree now witnessed her defeat. This was Elias's moment. He walked past Carla and stood next to Deputy Miller, looking straight at his lawyer. Elias, calmly, but loud enough for Carla and the retreating board members to hear. Thank you, Deputy Miller. I appreciate you enforcing the law impartially. Ms. Vance and her board were attempting to seize my property based on a faulty interpretation of rules they themselves drafted. They didn't realize they were operating on land that legally belongs to me. They came here thinking they were the judge and the sheriff of the street. Elias turned, locking eyes with Carla, delivering the power fantasy line with the cold gravity of veterans setting the record straight. Elias, well, Ms. Vance, you just found out you're neither. You didn't know I'm the one holding the deed that determines who the real sheriff is. Now, since you violated the TRO and damaged my fence, I believe you and your board have pressing legal matters to attend to. The closing of the clubhouse parking lot. Carla and her board members were speechless, their control shattered. They retreated quickly to the HOA Clubhouse, a spacious building located prominently at the end of the main subdivision drive, to regroup and contact their own lawyer. But Elias and Hank weren't finished. The TRO covered the common areas, which Hank had confirmed included the main access road and the parking lot directly in front of the clubhouse. Hank made a quick call. 10 minutes later, a professional fencing company arrived. Not the contractors who cut the fence, but a team Elias had hired days ago. They quickly erected temporary but sturdy chain-link barriers across the entire parking lot entrance of the HOA Clubhouse, under protection of the valid TRO, which prohibited the HOA from using or modifying the common area property. Elias was legally exercising his right as a de facto landowner. He didn't lock the board members inside, but he legally closed their main access point and their administrative headquarters' immediate parking facility. A large, professionally printed sign was immediately posted on the temporary fence. Private property, owned by WCG Holdings, LLC, temporarily closed by court order. No trespassing. Carla and the board members stared out the clubhouse windows. Trapped. They had nowhere to park their expensive cars. They had nowhere to hold their emergency meeting without admitting they were illegally using the property. They had just been locked out of their own seat of power by the man they had tried to crush. The battle for the small fence was over. The war for the entire subdivision had begun. The frozen accounts and panic sets in. The immediate aftermath of the clubhouse parking lot closure sent shockwaves through the Willow Creek community. The HOA board members, led by a livid Carla Vance, were forced to park their luxury vehicles on the street, an unthinkable violation of their own rules, and hold their emergency meeting in a cramped, unventilated back office of the now legally inaccessible clubhouse. Their panic escalated when their attorney, retained on a hastily arranged conference call, delivered the grim news. The temporary restraining order was ironclad, and the quiet title action filed by Elias's lawyer, Hank Davies, was based on compelling evidence of an unexecuted deed transferred dating back decades. "We can fight the title issue, Carla, but it will take months and millions." The HOA lawyer, Mr. Stevenson, warned them over the speakerphone. But that's the least of your problems. Mr. Thorne's team didn't just file the title claim. They filed a formal request for an independent forensic audit of the HOA's financials with the State Attorney General's office, citing significant budgetary irregularities. The blood drained from Carla's face. She looked quickly at Betty and Doug, the two remaining board members, who avoided her gaze. The paper trail of self-enrichment. Elias and Hank, meanwhile, were already one step ahead. They had submitted their evidence. Detailed line-item budget reports Carla had signed off on, cross-referenced with public permit filings and local business invoices. "Look at this, Elias," Hank said, spreading a huge printout of the HOA's capital improvements budget for the last 3 years. Over $40,000 allocated for clubhouse landscaping and beautification. Yet look at the receipts. Hank pointed to a series of invoices from the landscaping firm Green Acres. While some charges were for the clubhouse, a significant portion, totaling nearly $18,000, were clearly addressed at 218 Aspen Drive, Carla Vance's personal address, detailing the installation of rare Japanese maples and a custom-built stone fountain. She used HOA funds to upgrade her own private mansion. Elias observed, his voice devoid of surprise. Classic misuse of power. She was taxing the community to increase the value of her own property. The paper trail continued. HOA administrative travel. $12,000 linked to airline tickets and resort bills for a board strategy session in Scottsdale, Arizona. Only Carla and her husband had traveled. Maintenance equipment upgrade. $8,500. An invoice for a commercial-grade zero-turn riding mower, far too large for small patches of public land. A quick Google search revealed the same model visible in the background of Carla Vance's personal Facebook photos, proudly displayed in her own garage. Hank shook his head in disgust. She saw the HOA as her private slush fund. The arrogance is breathtaking. This is no longer just a civil land dispute. Elias, this is a potential felony charge of embezzlement. The public uproar. The most effective weapon in Elias's arsenal wasn't a legal brief. It was transparency. Under pressure from Hank's legal filings, the HOA was forced to publicly release the audit request and the list of alleged financial discrepancies to the community via email, a measure designed to appease the Attorney General. The effect was instantaneous and explosive. Homeowners who had grumbled about the exorbitant HOA fees suddenly saw exactly where their money was going. The community message boards exploded with furious posts. Post from Concerned Resident 45. "Wait, so $18,000 of my maintenance fees went to a custom fountain at Carla Vance's house? While my curb is cracking. This is fraud. We need an emergency meeting to vote her out." Post from Hardworking Mom. "I paid a $500 fine last month because my recycling bin was visible for 15 minutes past the deadline. And she's flying to Arizona on our dime? This woman needs to be arrested. Thorne might be eccentric, but he's exposing a criminal." The community's loyalty, built on fear and superficial compliance, evaporated instantly. Carla Vance was no longer the strict but respected leader. She was revealed as a common thief using her self-appointed position for personal gain. The villain archetype was perfectly established. Hypocritical, petty, and corrupt. The inevitable quitting. Carla, facing a complete collapse of her authority and a looming threat of criminal charges, tried a desperate Hail Mary. She attempted to call another emergency meeting, but no one showed up. Betty and Doug, seeing the writing on the wall, sent terse emails resigning from the board immediately, citing irreconcilable differences and a desire for financial distance from any potential legal issues. The Willow Creek Chronicle, the local online news source that Carla had excitedly called in Part 4, now ran a front-page expose with a headline, "HOA President accused of massive embezzlement and operating on stolen land." The quiet veteran who exposed her. Carla sat alone in the tiny, dark office of the lockdown clubhouse. The legal wall had crumbled. The financial facade was exposed, and the community she ruled had turned against her completely. She had tried to take a few feet of land from a quiet old man, and in return he had legally, financially, and reputationally dismantled her entire life. The courtroom was packed, not with legal professionals, but with residents of Willow Creek. The news of the embezzlement investigation and the illegal land ownership had turned the emergency hearing into a public spectacle. Carla Vance, now looking drawn and frantic, sat at the defense table next to Mr. Stevenson, her HOA counsel, who looked deeply uncomfortable. Elias Thorne and Hank Davies sat opposite, radiating calm and methodical preparation. The hearing was before Judge Thompson, a no-nonsense figure known for his strict adherence to property law. The HOA's lawyer, Mr. Stevenson, stood first, attempting to frame the issue as a simple neighborhood spat. Your Honor, this is a vexatious misuse of the court system. The plaintiff, Mr. Thorne, is attempting to obstruct the legitimate functions of the Homeowners Association, which has maintained the common areas for 30 years. He is using an archaic corporate loophole to claim land that everyone understands belongs to the community. Archaic, yes, Judge Thompson said, peering over his glasses at Stevenson. But is the loophole legal, counsel? That is the question before this court. Hank Davies rose, his presentation crisp and precise. He didn't waste time on emotion, focusing only on the documents. Your Honor, we submit the following evidence. Exhibit A, the original master plat map 1985, clearly indicating condition for transfer of common area deeds. Exhibit B, the corporate filing of the Willow Creek Development Group, WCDG, confirming non-completion of Phase 6. Exhibit C, the current deed of corporate ownership showing WCDG is legally owned by my client's holding company. Hank placed a large linen map from the surveyor's office on an easel. The land was never transferred. The HOA has been acting on a de facto authority that lacks legal foundation. Furthermore, Your Honor, we submit Exhibit D, photographic evidence, and a deputy's report detailing Ms. Vance's willful violation of this court's valid temporary restraining order, and a clear act of trespass on my client's private Lot 32B. The judge's focus, contempt and title. Judge Thompson spent a long, agonizing moment reviewing the evidence, particularly the photos of the cut fence and Carla standing over it. Ms. Vance, the judge addressed her directly, his voice stern. Did you or did you not instruct contractors to violate a court order that was personally served to you on Friday morning? Carla, coached by her lawyer, mumbled, I believe the order was invalid, Your Honor. The land is community property. Belief does not supersede law, ma'am, the judge snapped. You demonstrated a blatant disregard for the judicial process. This is clear contempt of court. He turned back to the legal counsel. Mr. Stevenson, the evidence is compelling. Your client's association has been operating without legal title to the most critical assets of the subdivision for decades. The original conditions for transfer were never met. I cannot ignore the corporate structure and the clear language of the original plat. Stevenson tried one final, desperate plea. But Your Honor, the precedent of decades of usage and maintenance must grant them equitable ownership. Otherwise, the entire community's infrastructure falls apart. That is an issue for the parties to resolve financially, not a basis for denying legal title. Judge Thompson countered firmly. The HOA had an obligation to ensure the deed transfer was finalized. They failed to do so. Mr. Thorne's predecessor, WCG, did not fail to maintain ownership. The legal coup d'etat. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Thompson prepared to deliver his ruling. The fate of Willow Creek's entire administrative structure hung in the balance. Judge Thompson, based on the undisputed evidence of the original master plat, Exhibit A, and the current corporate structure, Exhibit C, this court finds that the legal ownership of the Willow Creek Common Areas, including all access roads, drainage easements, and the clubhouse property, remains vested in the corporate entity, Willow Creek Development Group Holdings. Therefore, the motion for declaratory judgment to quiet title is granted to the plaintiff, Elias Thorne's holding company. A stunned murmur went through the audience. Elias was now legally the owner of the streets. The judge continued, delivering the fatal blow to the HOA's operations. Judge Thompson, furthermore, due to the established contempt of this court's restraining order, the demonstrated misuse of fiduciary duty evident in the Attorney General's investigation, and a lack of legal standing, all operational authority of the current Willow Creek Homeowners Association is hereby suspended indefinitely. All HOA bank accounts are frozen immediately, pending a full forensic audit and the establishment of a legally compliant successor entity. The gavel slammed down BAM, the sound echoing the final devastating collapse of Carla Vance's reign. Carla stared blankly at the bench, tears welling up as her power, her authority, and her access to community funds were wiped out in a single surgical legal order. She had been the judge, the sheriff, and the queen of Willow Creek, and now she was nothing. Elias, sitting composed, simply nodded once to Hank. The satisfaction was not loud or boastful. It was a quiet, profound satisfaction of a meticulous strategy executed perfectly. The aftermath: total defeat. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed Carla Vance, who was quickly ushered away by her now panicked lawyer. The residents, however, flocked to Elias. They weren't angry. They were relieved and, for the first time, respectful. "Mr. Thorne, you just saved us from a financial nightmare," one homeowner admitted sheepishly. "We all knew she was misusing the funds, but we were too afraid to act." Elias accepted their quiet gratitude, but kept his focus on Hank. Elias, softly to Hank, "Now, Hank, it's time to deliver the bill for our legal fees, the property damage, and the special assessment for 30 years of illegal usage of the property. Let's make sure they understand the full cost of trying to steal from a veteran." The final, decisive legal move had been made. Elias didn't just win his fence back. He acquired the entire game board, executing the mandate. 2 days after Judge Thompson's ruling, the atmosphere in Willow Creek had shifted from controlled complacency to outright panic. The HOA was effectively dead, its accounts frozen, and its former president, Carla Vance, was facing legal and criminal peril. The residents were left without rules, without a budget, and most critically, without clear ownership of the very ground beneath their feet. Elias Thorne was ready to execute his power. He and Hank Davies met at the fenced-off clubhouse parking lot, now deserted and bearing the stark, unforgiving sign, "Private Property," owned by WCG Holdings, LLC. "The court order is clear," Elias, Hank stated, holding a stack of freshly notarized documents. "You have been declared the legal owner of all common areas. The roads, the main gate, the drainage facilities, and the clubhouse lot. It's time to formalize the situation." Elias, wearing a simple jacket and work boots, gave a curt nod. His victory was not for show, but for principle. The first official act was simple but devastating. Elias's team replaced a broken chain-link fence on Lot 32B with a brand new 10-foot-high custom wrought iron fence, paid for by WCG. On the main pillars, they affixed a brass plaque: Lot 32B, Private Property, maintained by Thorne Estate. Trespassers will be prosecuted. This was a quiet monument to his victory over the petty tyranny that had begun with a simple fence violation, the private road revelation. The second act was a dramatic display of his true leverage over the entire subdivision. Elias dispatched a crew to the main entrance of Willow Creek, the beautifully landscaped median and archstone entrance sign that proudly proclaimed Willow Creek, a premier gated community. The crew didn't touch the sign. Instead, they placed large, clearly visible signs at the beginning and end of the main thoroughfare, where it intersected the public county road. The new signs read, "Notice, this is a private road, owned and operated by WCG Holdings, LLC. Access is permitted via license agreement only. Speed limit, 20 miles per hour. The effect was instantaneous. Homeowners driving home were forced to acknowledge that the road they paid taxes for, the road they drove their children on, was now legally owned by the old veteran they had all tacitly agreed to ostracize. The sense of vulnerability and dependence on Elias was total. The power fantasy climax. The special assessment. Hank then executed the most significant move, the financial counterstrike that had been planned since Part 2. He filed the official claim against the now suspended HOA for damages and fees. This wasn't just a claim for legal fees. It was a bill for retroactive usage and property maintenance fees covering 30 years, based on the obscure clause in the original WCDG developer contract. Hank read the official demand notice being delivered to the suspended HOA's legal representative. Hank, reading the document with cold satisfaction. For the unauthorized use and occupation of WCDG Holdings common area property over the preceding 34 years, including but not limited to unauthorized collection of maintenance assessments, the uncompensated use of private road infrastructure, and the legal costs incurred by the landowner to establish clear title against the association's baseless claims of ownership. WCG Holdings hereby issues a special assessment and claim for damages totaling $875,000. $875,000. Payment is due within 60 days. The sum was astronomical, far exceeding the frozen HOA accounts, virtually ensuring the association would be plunged into unrecoverable debt. Carla Vance's $15,000 fine attempt had resulted in the entire HOA being saddled with a debt nearly 60 times greater. The ultimate reveal. As the reality of the financial and legal coup set in, Elias decided it was time to reveal the full extent of his quiet power. He organized a public but unofficial meeting in the community park, a common area he now legally owned, requiring him to grant himself permission to use it. A subdued crowd of residents gathered. They were no longer angry. They were confused and desperate for direction. Elias stood before them, not on a podium, but simply on the grass, under the shade of the trees he now controlled. Elias, I know many of you are confused and angry. You've been told for years that you own the roads, the park, and the clubhouse. The truth, as the court confirmed, is that your former leadership failed to properly complete the legal transfer from the original developer. I bought that original developer company. That means I own the land you're standing on. He paused, letting the statement sink in. Elias, they tried to find me from my tree, threaten my property, and use community funds for personal gain. They thought I was just one lone homeowner. What they failed to research, and this is a key to the entire failure of the Willow Creek HOA, is that I didn't just buy a house here 10 years ago. Elias stepped forward, his eyes sweeping over the faces of the humbled residents. He delivered the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. Elias, I didn't just buy the house I live in, and I didn't just buy the defunct developer company 3 years ago. I bought the holding company that bought the bankrupt WCG, the money that financed the construction of your homes, the loans that were secured against the land for phase 1, 2, and 3. I was the primary silent private investor in the original development of Willow Creek. Decades ago, I have been connected to this land since the first shovel broke ground. I've always been the veteran landowner of this entire block. They just didn't know it. The revelation hung in the air. Elias was not an outsider. He was a silent, original patron who had been watching their petty misrule from the inside. The feeling of absolute, devastating power over their destiny was complete. The crowd was utterly silenced, staring at their unexpected, quiet sovereign. The public shaming and legal fallout. The revelation of Elias Thorne's true status. The silent investor and legal landowner of the entire subdivision crushed Carla Vance far more effectively than any direct confrontation. Her public life, built on perceived authority and material wealth, evaporated overnight. The county sheriff's office, prompted by the attorney general's formal investigation, served Carla with a subpoena. She was now under investigation for embezzlement, wire fraud, and contempt of court. Her husband, embarrassed by the public exposure and a massive $875,000 special assessment debt looming over the defunct HOA, reportedly moved out of their house. The final, humiliating blow came when a local news crew parked directly across from her home, broadcasting live reports about the disgraced former HOA president. Carla was filmed tearfully attempting to remove the very Japanese maples and stone fountain she had illegally paid for with community funds, in a desperate, futile attempt to reduce her liability. Her former friends and neighbors drove by, not with sympathy, but with cold, silent judgment. The archetype of the untouchable Karen was utterly broken. She was no longer a symbol of petty control. She was a criminal facing ruin. The audience's need for justice was deeply satisfied, achieved entirely through legal and financial means. Elias's unconditional offer, with Carla and the old HOA structure neutralized, Elias shifted his focus from retribution to reconstruction. He scheduled a formal meeting with the residents, held this time in a rented community hall, since the clubhouse was still legally closed. The atmosphere was dramatically different from their last encounter. The residents were humble, anxious, and receptive. They knew they were completely at Elias's mercy. He held the deeds to their roads and the power to demand a massive $875,000 payment, which would bankrupt every homeowner. Elias walked in front of the room, flanked by Hank Davies, who was holding the infamous special assessment document. Elias, I know why you're here. You want to know if I'm going to foreclose on your roads, raise the rent on the land your houses sit on, or demand that nearly $900,000 from you? And the answer is complex. A collective gasp of fear rippled through the room. Elias, first, let me be clear. The special assessment is real. The debt is legally due, based on the former board's failure to execute the title transfer and their subsequent illegal use of the land I own. That document is filed with the court, and it will not disappear. He paused, letting the fear build, ensuring they understood the gravity of his power. This was not a moment of violence. It was a demonstration of absolute, yet controlled, power. Elias, however, I didn't fight this battle for the money. I fought it because a group of arrogant people tried to steal from me and others, believing their self-appointed title made them superior to the law. My goal was justice, not profit. The path to true community ownership. Elias then revealed his plan, a strategy for mutual benefit, demonstrating his commitment to the long-term integrity of the neighborhood he secretly helped build. Elias, I am prepared to offer a solution, but it requires you, the legitimate homeowners, to take responsibility and demonstrate competence. 1. The debt. WCG Holdings will immediately waive the entire $875,000 special assessment, provided that the community agrees to form a new, legally compliant Homeowners Association within 90 days. A real one, with bylaws that adhere to the original development agreements. 2. The land transfer. Once the new HOA is legally formed, I will sell the entire common area property, the roads, the park, and the clubhouse lot, to the new HOA for the symbolic sum of $1. This final, definitive transfer will be recorded with the county, ensuring the land is truly owned by the residents forever, eliminating the corporate loophole. 3. The conditions. The only condition I impose is this. The great oak tree on Lot 32B will be formally protected forever by a permanent conservation easement that must be written into the new HOA's bylaws. And you must never again allow your association to be run by people who mistake pettiness for leadership. The relief in the room was overwhelming. Many residents openly wept. Others jumped up in excitement. Elias had offered not only forgiveness, but a path to genuine, clean ownership, free from the toxic legacy of Carla Vance. Elias, the choice is yours. You can let the debt stand, and we can all watch the subdivision collapse in foreclosure chaos. Or you can work together, form a clean government, and finally, legitimately own your community. The residents immediately began to talk amongst themselves, energized and motivated. The meeting concluded not with ruling, but with the spontaneous formation of a new HOA steering committee dedicated to righting the wrongs of the past. Elias had not just defeated his enemy, he had empowered his neighbors, proving that true power lies in legal strategy and the moral high ground, not in brute force or petty rules. The new dawn in Willow Creek. 90 days passed swiftly, marked by a palpable shift in Willow Creek. The residents, motivated by the fear of massive debt and the clear path to genuine ownership, worked together with remarkable efficiency. They hired an independent auditor to clear the financial mess, meticulously drafted new, transparent bylaws, and officially filed the documentation to form the Willow Creek Community Association, WCCA, a new entity free of the corruption and pettiness of its predecessor. The WCCA's first official act was to vote on the transfer agreement with Elias Thorne's WCDG Holdings. The vote was unanimous. The closing ceremony took place not in a formal office, but on the newly renovated lawn of the clubhouse, which Elias had reopened for the residents' use. Elias and Hank met with the 3 members of the new WCCA board, a young, sharp accountant, a retired school principal, and the intimidated former treasurer, who now stood tall with newfound purpose. Elias signed the final deed transfer, officially selling all common areas, the roads, the park, the drainage facilities, and the clubhouse property, to the WCCA for the symbolic price of $1. Elias, as he hands the deed across the table. This is yours now. Truly yours. I'm simply transferring a power that should have been yours 30 years ago. Cherish it, and never forget the cost of poor leadership. The new board members, visibly emotional, thanked him profusely. They assured him that the oak tree conservation easement, the permanent legal protection for his ancient red oak, was the first article enshrined in their new bylaws. The quiet return to solitude. With the legal battle concluded and the community now truly in control of its destiny, Elias retreated to the quiet solitude of Lot 32B. His new wrought iron fence stood as a boundary of respect, not defiance. His property was still wild, still non-conforming, but it was now accepted as a piece of Willow Creek's unique and resilient character. The old $875,000 special assessment was formally vacated by the court, and the legal cases against the community were closed. The cost of the entire legal battle was absorbed by Elias's holding company, a testament to his commitment to principle over profit. As for Carla Vance, the former HOA president, the ending was definitive. Facing overwhelming evidence from forensic audit, she agreed to a plea deal, resulting in significant fines, probation, and the forced sale of the house she had used HOA funds to upgrade. She moved out of Willow Creek quietly, her reputation in tatters, her power fantasy completely extinguished. She became a cautionary tale, a permanent reminder to the community about the dangers of unchecked ego and micromanagement. The satisfaction of justice was complete. The villain was legally and publicly defeated without a single act of physical aggression. The new normal, life in Willow Creek resumed, but with a profound difference. The residents developed a new sense of community and responsibility. They no longer relied on one tyrannical figure, but engaged in civil discourse. They were meticulous about their budgets, hyper-aware of their bylaws, and deeply respectful of the rule of law. More importantly, their relationship with Elias Thorne changed entirely. He was no longer the grumpy hermit, but the veteran landowner, the man who sacrificed his peace to save their community from itself. Neighbors stopped by his fence not to complain, but to wave and thank him. They held a small, informal ceremony, planting a plaque next to the great oak, dedicating the tree to the spirit of private ownership and community vigilance. One afternoon, the new WCCA president approached Elias at his gate. WCCA President, Mr. Thorne, we just wanted to inform you that we had to hire a crew to fix a sinkhole on Maple Drive. We debated for hours, but we finally understand the process. We voted, we budgeted, we got 3 bids, and we paid for out of our clean funds. It wasn't easy, but it was fair. Elias, smiling a rare, genuine smile. That's all I ever want to see. Responsibility. Final image of triumph. Elias walked back to his porch, coffee in hand. He sat down in his favorite rocking chair, perfectly framed by the towering, magnificent branches of the great red oak tree. The tree, which Carla had tried to chop down, now stood as a proud symbol of his enduring victory. He looked out over his land, over the new fence, toward the road he used to own, now rightfully belonging to the people who used it. He had restored balance. He had proven that meticulous preparation and adherence to the law are the ultimate forms of power. He had taught the self-appointed judges of suburbia that the real authority lay not in petty rules, but in the truth of the deed. Elias took a slow sip of coffee, the afternoon sun dappling to the leaves of protected oak. Finally at peace. The war was over, and the veteran had secured his quiet corner of the world.